Hey, let's take a look at the Vikings' biggest needs after the first wave of free agency. Welcome back to the Onebar and Lupagus show. I'm Lupagus, and free agency, it's a week and a half old, which means it's pretty well over because free agency starts hot and heavy and then it kind of just peters out. And speaking of peters out, be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the vids. We are over 9,000 subscribers, closing in at 9,100. So thank you to everybody who has subscribed so far, and definitely keep on smashing that button if you have not yet. And also drop hashtag 9,000 in the comments for our 9,000 giveaway, which we'll be doing very, very soon. Also drop hashtag badass in the comments for a chance to win a amazing piece from That's Badass What Are at the end of the month as well. All right, so let's talk Minnesota Vikings needs. Like we said, free agencies, it's in the waning moments now. Sure, it's going to go on for the next 6 months or whatever the hell it is, 8 months, 9 months, whatever. It's the first week is the hot week and it's over. It's done. So let's talk Minnesota Vikings needs, how they were affected. Vikings signed a lot of players. Brought a lot of faces back, brought in some new faces. So the needs have changed a bit, but I'm going to rank them from least need to highest need. So let's start. With the fifth one, I could go a couple ways, but I think I'm going to go interior offensive line, especially look at the guard depth. They have the starters from left to right, whether you like them or not. Christian Darrisaw, Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury coming back, Ed Ingram in year 2. And then you got, Brian O'Neill, but he may not be ready for the start of the season. So you got Oli Udo, who they brought in. But you got depth at tackles, Blake Brandel, Vadarian Lowe, maybe not the greatest depth, but you do have depth there. But look on the inside. I mean, especially at right guard, not much on the depth chart. Sure, you can swing a Chris Reed over there. You could swing an Austin Schlotman over there. But a guy, in the draft, probably mid-rounds, who could play left guard or right guard, that swing guy, still a pretty big value and still a pretty big need for the Vikings. So I think something they could definitely look at. Like I said, maybe with that 5th or 6th round pick, if a Drew Scruggs slides down the board, or maybe even grab like an Andrew Voorhees and put him on the shelf, knowing that you have some quality depth down the road when he recovers from his injury. But definitely an area that could stand to improve. Again, the starters set, whether you like them or not. It's just a depth that could stand to get a little bit better there at interior old line. Let's go to the 4th one. I'm going inside linebacker. Yes, the Vikings brought back Jordan Hicks. Whether you like that move or not, he will be back. My hope is that maybe Brian Flores uses him a little bit different, doesn't ask him to do so much coverage, and just lets him just attack. Like, that's what he's really best at, just tackling the ball carrier, running back specifically. Hopefully he's used a little more that way. Other than that, though, I mean, you got Brian Asamoah, who's set for a breakover. I think everybody's got very, very high expectations for the second-year Viking linebacker, replacing Eric Kendricks. His role should be huge. And he's got the speed. He's got the fire. I mean, he should have a huge year if he's starting. Behind him is where the question comes in. Vikings just signed Troy Reeder. He was a special teamer last year for the Chargers. He did play some time with the Rams there. He's a depth piece. I don't know how much defense he will actually play. You got Troy Dye, who just hasn't done much of anything since he's come in the league. More than he's just basically a glorified special teamer. William Kweku, the undrafted guy from last year too. So depth could improve, and I think you may bring in a guy who can challenge Jordan Hicks for the starting spot. That could come in the form of a rookie. Maybe it's round 1, a Drew Sanders, a Trenton Simpson. Maybe it's round 3 with a Jack Campbell, Noah Sewell, someone like that. Maybe Dorian Williams, who was selected in the 3rd round in our mock on our live last night. So definitely an issue. I think an area that can stand to improve. They have addressed it. They don't have to force it, but I think it's definitely something they will improve in the draft. Whether it's just a depth piece down, in the mid rounds, or maybe even a guy who can compete to start. All right, that brings us to need number 3. And to me, this is cornerback. Great job, signing Byron Murphy. That was a huge signing. He's going to be really an ideal fit in Brian Flores' scheme, playing on the outside, being that guy who plays on an island, locks down the top receiver. And then here's what makes it a little bit less of a need than the other 2 on my list. It's just there is at least some young guys with upside here on the depth chart. Andrew Booth Jr. coming back from the injury, Caleb Evans. So you do have some players there who potentially, you got hope for. You got hope that they can be something. So you used a high pick on them last year. You're not giving up on them yet. So at least that's there. You can't say that about some other positions. So cornerback, again, this is still very much in play at 23, depending who's on the board. I think the Vikings could look to upgrade as early as round 1. Round 3, they could definitely go with a guy too. Maybe even double dip at some point in this draft at corner to flesh out this depth chart. But as far as the top 3, they're okay right now. But there is some bigger needs. And let's get to need number 2, and that to me is wide receiver number 2 specifically. Justin Jefferson. See, you have an elite talent here in Justin Jefferson. So obviously, you're always going to have your wide receiver core is always going to look good when Justin Jefferson's on there. KJ Osborne, a very, very solid player as well. Interesting to see if he elevates to number 2 this year and they look for a slot guy. They recently just signed Brandon Powell, got Jalen Reagor and Jalen Naylor on the depth chart, along with Tristan Jackson, who's still here, and Blake Prohl. So I think you look for a number 2 guy in the draft. 23, definitely an option. Jackson Smith and Jigba would be huge. Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston. I mean, all those guys are options there. Jordan Addison, another one. If you wait around 3, maybe you hope Rashee Rice is there. Someone like that. But this is a deep receiver class. You can find somebody. So I think the Vikings are definitely going to look to upgrade that. The fact they didn't go and get a Mecole Hardman, a DJ Chark. I mean, they still could go with the Chark route. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think this is an upgrade that happens in the draft, and one of their first couple choices will be used at a wide receiver. And that brings us to the number 1 need, and that is D-line, defensive line. And the reason this is the biggest need to me is just you don't have that elite player on this unit. I mean, you got Harrison Phillips. He's very good, but he's not an elite. Playing your nose. Then you got, Dean Lowry, who is ideally he'd be a backup, but he can be pushed to be a starter, and he can do fine. He can be serviceable there. And then the other side, Jonathan Bullard, James Lynch, Sezi Atamoya, whatever combination you put out there, you don't have the guy. So there's no elite talent here. There's no rock star stud. And I think this is what they have to look for in the draft at 23. Brian Bresee, Kalijah Cansey, the explosive player from Pitt. One of those guys would be amazing fits for the Vikings, solidifying, this front line. You look at Cansey, you can put him inside, you can put him outside. Bresee, I think, would be a really good force out there at the 5 tech on this 3-man front for Brian Flores. And who knows, maybe even Jalen Carter slides down the board, you pull the trigger on him too. But I think that is the main issue and the biggest need for this team as the draft approaches is getting that guy on the defensive line. You don't see many mocks reflecting that. Most mocks out there give them a corner or a wide receiver, but it's the Vikings' biggest need. So definitely, in my opinion, I think most agreed last night on the live. So curious what you guys think. Your biggest needs for the Vikings as the draft approaches after this first wave of free agency. Let me know in the comments. Don't forget #9000, #badass, and # keep your skull in your hole.